It is such a great zchus to have been invited by all the wonderful people of Aish Torah, specifically Rabbi Dov Rossman, Yosef Friedman, and Eric Cooper-Smith. I don't know if Rabbi Eric is here, but he's such an integral part of Aish Torah. I'm proud to be considered one of his friends. And I'm just honored. We had such a wonderful gathering this afternoon with the Chaver from Gesher. I thank my dear friend Rabbi Moshe Chaim Proctor for making sure that that happened. Yeah, he deserves a round of applause. And I hope that tonight we'll be able to be inspired together. One of the most dramatic moments in the Torah is when Yehuda confronts Yosef, not knowing really that he's Yosef, that it's his brother. And Yosef says to Yehuda, listen, we had a deal. Anybody in whose knapsack was found that gevia, that cup, he's going to stay back here and he's going to remain with me, and the rest of you can go back to your father. And Yehuda had taken responsibility for Binyamin. We all know the story. Binyamin was the youngest. Yaakov did not want to send him. And Yehuda says very dramatic words. And first we're going to translate the words as they are in the Pasuk. And then we're going to translate them as different great people saw a deep message in these words. What Yehuda says is, Ki eich ela el ovi. How am I going to go up to my father? V'hanar eineno iti. And the child is not with me. How am I going to go back to my father? Yaakov, I took responsibility for this child. How could I go back to my father and the child is not with me? So some great Rabbonim teached it this way, B'derech Drush, which means homiletically. None of us are going to live forever. At the end of the 120 years that we are in this world, Eich Ela Lovi, how are we going to go to our Father in heaven? V'hanar, and our children are not with us. We wanted to raise them as religious, wonderful Jewish people, and unfortunately they fell off the wayside. Eich Ela Lovi, how are we going to go to our Father in heaven? V'hanar einenu iti, and our children are not with us. There are others who understand it in a different way. They understand it. Hanar means youth. Eich Ela el Ovi. How are we going to go up to our Father in heaven? V'hanar, and the youthful years that we had, that we could have accomplished so much. Einenu iti, are not with me. I wasted my time in my youth. I didn't accomplish something, and that's when people can accomplish. Eich Ela Lovi, how can I go to my Father in heaven? V'hanar einenu iti. And I wasted my youth. It's not there. Some say nar means vibrancy. A Jew can never get burned out, no matter what age you are, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, makes no difference. A Jew always has to be vibrant. Eich Ela Lovi, how are we going to go to our Father in heaven? V'hanar, and the vibrancy that we're supposed to have, we don't have with us. And I would like to add another pshat. Eich Ela Lovi, how are we going to go to our Father in heaven? V'hanar, and the youth of Kallah Yisrael is not with us. I want to tell you some statistics that are frightening. Today, there are 13.3 million Jews in the world. Only 1.8 million are religious. That means 4 out of 5 Jews are off the derech. 4 out of 5 Jews have no commitment to orthodoxy, to religious Judaism. Could you imagine, no matter where you live, whether you live in Chicago, Manchester, New York, whatever, Yerushalayim, you go down the street and somebody tells you, you see in that apartment building, on that floor there's a guy who's got 5 sons, 4 are off the derech. Your heart would break for him. 4 out of 5 are off the derech. And that's how you have to think of Hashem, our Father. He looks around the world today and he sees 4 out of his 5 children, 4 out of 5 all over the world are not religious. That's what Aish Torah is all about. That's what our obligation when we come to a Yarchei Kallah is all about. To think about that. To think and to make a commitment and to help Hashem retrieve his children. They are all his children. They are all our brothers and sisters. But we have to be out there. I want to tell you about one of the most moving incidents of my life. As I mentioned to the Gesher boys before, I have the opportunity to travel many places where Judaism flourished, whether it's Poland, Lithuania, Spain, Italy. And one year we went to Hungary. And I knew that along the Danube River, Nebuch, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, what they did was they lined up Jews and they shot them into the water, into the Danube River. And many times they would tie two Jews together and they would only shoot one of them. Could you imagine the brutality of it? But the force of him falling into the water would drag the other guy in, but he couldn't swim because he was tied up to that person. And they both got killed. One drowned and one died being shot. Now, I have a mechutin, that means a relative in marriage. His name is Alex Kramer. And he once told me that he was on that line together with he wasn't on the line, his mother and his older sister. He wasn't even born yet. But they told him what happened. His mother and his older sister, before Alex was born, were on that line. And they were about to be shot. And Simon Wiesenthal came down, and he had... Not Simon Wiesenthal. What's the guy? Raoul Wallenberg, sorry. Raoul Wallenberg came down, and he had a number of visas. And the Germans, Yamach Shemam, they were very exact. And Wallenberg said that he has visas in order to save a certain amount of Jews. And they told him that he could save those 10 that he had the visas for. And he went up and down the line and he looked for the youngest women with the youngest children. And he saved my mechutin's mother and his older sister. Eventually, years later, he was born. But when we went to Hungary, and Alex came with me because he was born in Hungary, I told him I want to go to the Danube River. Because Reb Chaim Kanievsky has said numerous times, any place where Jews were killed only because they were Jews, that's a Mokem Kodesh. That's a holy place. And you can daven there. So I knew very well that we were going to daven at the Danube River. Now, I was busy with the tour, taking them various places. But Alex, my mechutin, he went straight to Hungary. And I come to Hungary late in the afternoon, and we're eating dinner. And Alex says, you told me you're going to the Danube, right? I said, yeah, tomorrow we're going to daven there. He says, I want to show you something. I was there today. Now, Alex Kramer is a fabulous photographer. He says, I want to show you the memorial that they have along the Danube River. And he takes out his camera, and he shows me the pictures, and I almost fainted. The memorial is so poignant. It is so moving and so simple. It's a row of empty shoes. And the shoes are knocked into the boardwalk. Shoes of parents, shoes of little children, and shoes of grandparents. Empty shoes. And I thought to myself, what a memorial. And I said to Alex, don't show it to anyone. Don't show this to anyone till we get there tomorrow. When we get off the bus, I want everybody to be as shocked as I was. And we get off the bus the next day, and I told them this is a place where Yidden were killed only because they were Jews. They were killed al Kiddush Hashem. And then they get off the bus, and we come to the shoes, and there's such crying, and there's such feeling because it's so simple, but it's so poignant. And I remember probably my dearest friend, Yaakov Solomon, who's so involved in Aish and Inspire. And Yaakov Solomon was there, and he was playing guitar, and we were singing, Gam ki elech b'geit almoves, even though that we walk in the valley of death, lo yira ra, we will not fear evil, ki atoi modi. And I said to everyone, look at this Danube. It looks blue, but it's not blue, it's red. It's red with Jewish blood. And I said 6 million is a lie, because it's 60 million, because every one of them could have had children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And of the whole trip, that was the most moving moment. And when I came back to New York, that's all I spoke about. Every speech that I gave, I spoke about the shoes along the Danube. And then I came back, of course, to New York. I'm not the Rav in my shul. I daven there like everybody else. And then on Rosh Hashanah, I daven near the front of the shul. And after Musaf, there's Birchas Koyanim. And the Koyanim, they bless everyone, and everybody's head is covered. And then when I took the talis off my head, I almost collapsed because I saw empty shoes. Empty shoes right along the Aron Kodesh. And I was stuck. I had to cover my head with the towel. I couldn't look at it because it reminded me of the empty shoes that were on the Danube. And I'm crying. Nobody at shul could understand why I'm crying. I mean, nobody realized except those sitting next to me, but it was just so painful. And I was thinking to myself, what's the difference between these shoes that I just saw in Rosh Hashanah after Duchening and the shoes along the Danube? Because the shoes along the Danube are not going to be filled. These shoes, in a few minutes, they were going to be filled, and people could go to shul, they could go to daven, they could go to do mitzvahs, they could go to do chesed, but those shoes remain empty. And that's our job. That's the job of Aish Torah. That's the job of all of us here tonight. Wherever we go back to our communities, we have to make sure that we tell everyone, it's not 6 million, it's 60 million, and we have to fill those shoes. How do we fill those shoes? By becoming inspirational people. By learning what Rab Noach stood for, not only the 48 ways, but knowing that every single person, Rabbi Eric Coopersmith, on the first Yarchei of Rab Noach Weinberg, quoted Rab Noach Weinberg, who said, you don't have to be a member of a higher institution. You don't have to be a recognized leader. There's no hierarchy when it comes to Kiruv and responsibility. No matter where you live in the world, if your second cousin or if your neighbor down the block is not where they're supposed to be as far as Yiddishkeit, we have the achrayas. That's part of filling the shoes. I'll tell you an amazing thing. Rab Noach always used to talk about the 48 ways. So if you take a look at one of the 48 ways, the 37th way is Noisei ba'oil im chaverai, carrying the burden of your friend. And it's fascinating to me because the Tiferes Yisrael has 4 ways of understanding. What does it mean, Noisei ba'oil chaverai? You feel the pain, you're carrying the burden of your friend. So one is obvious, tirchas haguf. You see somebody can't fix a flat tire, or a lady's carrying a heavy package and she can't manage it, so tirchas haguf. You, with your body, you try to help that person fix the flat, carry the package. That's one way. The second way is haitzos momain, to spend money. You see a guy doesn't have a job, he needs a loan, or you give tzedakah to someone. Haitzos momain, you buy a child who's a yasam, you buy a child a lulav, because his mother doesn't have enough money to pay for the lulav. Or even from a divorced home, many times the parents are not getting along, and it's very difficult for the child to get a lulav and a nesrig like he would like to get, and you go out and you get it for him. That's a beautiful thing, spending money. The third way, he says, tsar nafshay. Tsar nafshay is when your soul hurts for another person. I believe it means tefillah, like we spoke this afternoon, knowing what you're davening. In rifa'inu, davening for somebody that's not well, and Shema Aleinu, davening for somebody that needs help, whether it's in Shidduchim, Baruch Aleinu, davening in Parnosa, whatever it is, Tsar Nafshay. But listen to the 4th one. I could not get over this. He writes, Kishechosa seichel l'chaveiroi. When your friend is missing wisdom, binyanim zmaniyim oy nitzchiyim, temporary things or eternal things. Lo yachosh v'latzriach. Don't be hesitant to help him, to give him good advice. To teach him what's good for him in this world and the next world. In other words, you know what the Tiferes Yisrael is teaching us? Kiruv is part of Noisei ba'ol chaverai. Aish Torah, or Sameach, Ajap, all these wonderful Kiruv organizations. That's all part of Noisei ba'ol chaverai. Because today so many souls are crying out. So many people feel they have no meaning in life. What am I doing here? Why was I born? What am I supposed to accomplish? What am I supposed to do? And people are searching for answers. And we can give it to them. That's what Rabbi Noach taught everyone. We can give those answers, and we can inspire people, and that's why you have Yarchei organizations all around the world. But there's not enough of them. Still, 4 out of 5 are not religious. So part of the ways of Kinyan Torah is Noisei B'Oil Chavera, carrying the burden, carrying that spiritual burden of your friend. So how are you going to do it? So I want to tell you something amazing. A very personal story that really shook me to the core because it was so surprising when it happened and so unexpected. I give you all a blessing, every single one of you, that you should be zoicha to sit at a Seder, a Paysach Seder, with your children and grandchildren. Amen is right. Smart for saying Amen. You should say Amen by a bracha. So I want to tell you, a number of years ago, I was sitting at a Seder, and my children, my grandson, today who's learning in Eretz Yisrael, but this happened when he was 3 years old. His name is Avram, and I have to admit I have a certain special liking for those grandchildren that are named Avram. That was my father's name, Avram Zelik. And, a 3-year-old can't follow the Seder. So he's running around from the living room to the kitchen, coming in the dining room, in and out, in and out. And just as we're about to sing V'hisha Omda, which is one of the happiest parts of the Seder, we pick up the cup of wine, and V'hisha Omda, Avram comes over to me and he says, Zaidi, can I sit on your lap? Now, Mitzvah Hashem, you'll all be Zaidis, and the women in the back, Mitzvah Hashem, will be Bubbies. If your child or grandchild wants to sit on your lap during the Seder, what's the question? Of course. Avram, come right here. So I pick him up, I put him on my left lap, and I pick up the cup of wine, and we start singing V'hisha Omda. And as we're singing V'hisha Omda, I get so emotional. I can't even say the words. Now that's a happy part of the Seder. Once again, people are looking at me, my children and grandchildren. Zaidi, what's wrong? I'll tell you what was wrong. See, I was holding my grandchild, in my left hand. And in my right hand, I held a cup, and I was saying these words. Not only one nation is trying to get rid of us, in every generation, they're trying to get rid of the Jews. And I was thinking, we lost 6 million. It's not enough. What's going to happen with these kids from these generations when they grow up? They also have to go through that Gehenna. It never ends. And I was just thinking of my children, my grandchildren, and all the kids their age. The Baal HaGod is telling us it never ends. Okay, I got hold of myself, but the Seder wasn't the same anymore for me. I was so haunted by those words that the Baal HaGod is reassuring us. It never stops. So after the Seder, I had to take out every single Haggadah that I had, because I had to find somebody that says something that means something to me. And then I opened up the Chidah. Reb Chaim Yosef David Azaloi, who's buried not far from here, and the Sephardic giant of Torah, and he writes on V'hisha Omda the most incredible thing. He says the Baal HaGodah is telling us it's not always the sword, sometimes it's a smile. In other words, not in every generation are they trying to kill us like the Nazis did, or like Hamas is trying to do. There are many places, you go all around the world, Yiddishkeit is flourishing. There are more Torah schools today than ever before, more Beis Yaakov schools, more Kollel schools. You go to Manchester, it's unbelievable what's going on there. You go to Mexico, it's unbelievable how many Kollels and how many people are studying Torah in all these places. So what does the Baal HaGodah mean? Shelo Echad Bilvad. It happens in every generation. And he says, you know what the answer is? The smile. You come to America, and you see in America, there's no police outside the schools. You can be the biggest Talmud Chacham that you want. You could learn in Lakewood and Mir and Tells, wherever you want. Nobody's stopping you. But there's more assimilation, there's more mixed marriage in America than there ever was. 60%. And in certain countries where Yidden can learn Torah, it's 70%. How is that happening? And that's what the Baal HaGodah is telling us. Be careful. Keep your guard up. They're not going to kill you by the sword, but keep your guard up because they're so friendly. and you can have exposure to everyone. So as was mentioned before, I am a male. So that Chol Hamoed you would not believe. I had a bris in Long Island. The father was a goy, Napolitano. The mother was a Jew. So of course her parents wanted to have a bris. So fine, I go out and I did the bris on Chol Hamoed. Of all places, was a place called Mount Sinai in Long Island. Okay? Now, after I finished the bris, I turned around and I looked at the table where all the food was. I wish I would have had a camera. First, there was a blue box of Horowitz margaret and matzahs. Right next to it was a bowl of bagels. Right next to it was a cheese platter, and right next to it was a meat platter. Every avera you could think of. Chametz, matzah, basar, treif, kosher, not kosher. I was thinking, what does Eliyahu say about a bris like this? Is he happy? Is God happy with a bris like this? How did this happen? It didn't happen because of the sword. It happened because Jennifer could get a job in any bank. And Napolitano could meet Jennifer in any club, in any country club. And that's how it happens. And that's what the Balakot is telling us. And that's the role of Aish HaTorah, to make sure that that smile is not so overwhelming throughout America and throughout the world that our children get swallowed up by it. And we lose more with goodness than with the sword. With the sword, at least Jews know to keep their guard up. But with the smile, you really need those that are going to combat it. And that's what this Yarchei Kallah, that's what Aish HaTorah is all about. So how are we going to do it? So I'll tell you how to do it. Today there was a wonderful fellow, I forget his name. He told me that he's a Rebbe. Just for 2 years, he just started being a Rebbe, and he wanted to know if I could give him any advice of how he could reach his Talmidim. Now, I knew that I was going to say this thing which I'm about to tell you. And this is not only for that Rebbe, this is for all of us. Listen to what Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says on a pasuk in Chumash. Now, one of the things, when you're learning Chumash, know that there is not one extra word and not one extra letter. So if there's one extra word that seems, well, it doesn't really belong here, it probably not only belongs there, but it's got a lifelong lesson for you. And watch this. Many of us remember the story that Yaakov goes down, and that's where he's going to meet Rachel, and he sees the shepherds. And the shepherds are lazing off. The sheep still can be grazed, but, they were being brought in, and these guys weren't really taking care properly of the sheep. They could have still had some water. So Yaakov says to them like this. Vayomer lahem. Yaakov says to them, Achai, my brothers, ma'ayanatem, where are you guys from? Vayomer, they said, Mechoron anochnom, we're from Choron. So then he says, do you know Lavan ben Nachar? Vayomer, they say, yeah, Yadati, we know him. And they get into a whole conversation, Jewish geography conversation. And then he says to them, Vayomer, Yaakov says, Hein oid hayom gadol. The day is still big. That's not the time to bring the sheep in. Let them go out and graze. Hashko atzayin, v'lechu ra'u. Let them have water and let them graze. You're bringing them in too early. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says, what was the first words that Yaakov said to these shepherds? He said, Achai, my brothers. In other words, we're in it together. We're good pals. We're friends. Why did he say that word Achai? You know why? Because Yaakov knew he was going to give a musar. Yaakov knew he was going to criticize them. And no one will take any criticism from you unless they believe you love them. And that's what I told the Rebbe. The first thing is you have to love every Talmud. And if a Talmud gets under your skin, or if a Talmud is irritating you, there's a reason why he's doing that. Probably something's going on in his family, or something's going on in his psyche. You got to reach that and understand him and love him, and then you'll be able to reach him. And that's the answer. You want to know how you can influence your second cousin? Don't look down upon them. Many people that remain not frum, they remain not frum because they feel their frum relatives look down at them. And many of us many times do, but it's not fair. They didn't have the parents we had. They didn't have the Rebbes we had. They didn't have the opportunities we have. So the attitude is to pity them, not to hate them. And some people will say, well, I can't invite them to the house. They might have an influence. Well, be bold. Maybe you'll have an influence on them. Nobody's asking you to have them move in. But a Yontif is coming up. Purim is going to come up. Maybe invite them for the Suda. Probably some of these people never even saw Purim Suda. And you come and you invite them to the Suda, they'll be so happy. It's an interesting thing. And of course, when it comes to the Seder Leil Paysach, of course. How many of them haven't really had an authentic Seder? So wherever you go home to, just remember these things. That's what Rabbi Cooper Smith said, Rav Weinberg taught us. You don't have to be the head of an organization to do Kiruv. You can do Kiruv in your own family. You can do Kiruv in your own workforce. But it has to be Achai. It has to be my brothers. It has to be that you love them. There's a very interesting Gemara. The Gemara tells us in Psachim that Hashem said to Avram Avinu, Avram, you're so special that in Shemon Esrei, when the Jews recite Shemon Esrei, B'cha Chaismin, they are going to end only with your name. For example, when we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov, that's how we start Shemon Esrei. So why don't we say Baruch Atah Hashem, Mogen Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? We started the bracha, and those of you who have learned brachas know that the bracha has to end somehow like it started. Chasima mean Apsicha, right? So why don't we say Mogen Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? But Hashem said to Avram, no, you're special. B'cha Chaisman, with you, they're going to sign off. And Rav Zelek Epstein, the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Sha'ar Torah, once said something in the name of Rav Shimon Shkop, which is out of this world. He said this Gemara can be understood on a deeper level. B'cha Chaisman doesn't only mean the Shemon Esrei, it means time. And what God was saying to Avram Avinu, Avram, your type of people, that's what I'm going to end time with the Bali Tshuva. You see, Yaakov had a father and a grandfather that were from. Yitzchak had a father that was from. Avram had nobody. And still, even though that he had no one, he became the first of the patriarchs, right? The first of the Avos. So Hashem says, B'cha Chaismin, with you I'm going to sign off time. It's your type of people. And we see that all over the world. Again, Aish, or Sameach, Arachim, Ejab, all over the world. This is the age of B'cha Chaismin. And we can help that age should come to fruition by being makar of all the people that we can. And so I just want to tell you now, one of the greatest stories that you will ever hear in your life. I have the great schus to travel many, many places to speak. Now, I admit openly, one of my favorite places is South Africa. I love the South Africans. I love the accent. I love the people. Just fabulous people. How many here are South Africans? Anybody here? One. Okay. You got a big job, man. You got to go back there and bring a lot of other guys. But anyway, a couple years ago, one of the great people of our generation, Rabbi Warren Goldstein, had this brilliant idea that we all know about, but when he first proposed it, everybody thought it was ridiculous, that everybody would keep one Shabbos together, keep it together. And he called me up before he proposed the idea, and he said, listen, we have something in South Africa called Sinai Ndaba. I love that word, Ndaba. Ndaba is a Zulu word, or a South African word, which means conference for important matters. And he said, listen, we get 4,000 people to the Ndaba. And every year we bring in different speakers, and this year I want you to be one of the 8 speakers. And I'm going to present this idea of keeping Shabbos together. Now, the way we're going to do it is as follows. There's going to be 4 speakers speaking Saturday night in this huge hotel that will have 4,000 people. Sunday morning, every person of the 8 speakers is going to give different sessions, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever. And then at the evening session, there'll be 4 other speakers, and that's when I'm going to present the idea. I said, wow, I'm so honored to be one of those 8 speakers. That's great. Now, anytime, if you're a speaker, it's very important to know if there are other speakers on the program, who's going to be speaking with you. So I said to Rabbi Goldstein, who is going to be speaking? Who are the other speakers? He said, I'm so glad you asked that because I meant to tell you, one of the speakers is Rabbi Beryl Wine. I said, wow, that's amazing. So he said, and I need you to do me a favor. He said, Rabbi Goldstein said that he and Rabbi Wine had written a book about Lithuanian Jewry called The Legacy. He said, we want to sell the book. So at one of the sessions, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we want you sitting on one side of the stage, and me and Rabbi Wine will sit on the other side of the stage. You ask questions about the book, we'll answer them, and then the women will sell them and we'll autograph them afterwards. I said, yeah, I'm happy to do that, no problem. Fine. I come to South Africa a few days early. I'm on a Jewish radio station, and just as I finish, here comes Rabbi Wine. He's the next one who's on the radio station. I said, oh, Rabbi Wine, Shalom Aleichem, it's so great to see you. I said, I'm so happy to see you. I'm supposed to interview you on Sunday. He said, yeah, about what? I said, about the legacy, the book. He said, okay. I said, are there any questions you want me to ask you? If you're being interviewed, it's always good to know the questions in advance. So I don't know if you know Rabbi Wine. I understand that he's speaking here tomorrow. He's the coolest guy you could ever imagine. Just the coolest guy ever. And he says, don't worry, whatever you want to ask me, it's fine. I just want to show you how cool he is. I remember the first time that I ever spoke with him on a program, I was so terrified because the man knows everything. So I said to the lady, I said, Mrs. London, I have to speak first. I cannot speak after Rabbi Wine. So she said, okay, fine. And the topic was a great topic, preparing for Geula. How do we prepare for Mashiach? I'm telling you, I prepared for that speech 3 months. A week before the speech, I knew I'm speaking first. I was well prepared. I called Rabbi Wine. I said, I'm prepared for this talk. If you want to tell me what you want to say, so I won't say it, in case you want to say it. He said, I didn't even think about it yet. Right? I'm preparing 3 months. He didn't even think about it for a word, a word. Okay, fine. It's his prerogative. I get up. It was in Borough Park. I never forget. Montauk High School, 950 women, standing room only. I'm telling you, I covered that topic from head to toe. 55 minutes of thunder, how to prepare for the Geula. Rabbi Wine gets up there, and he says one sentence, and he has the whole audience in his back pocket. And he says, I learned a lesson in the rabbinate a long time ago. When the moil gets finished, there's very little left for the rabbi to do. And then he gave his whole great speech. So he didn't want to tell me what I should ask him, whatever I wanted. Okay, fine. We come Saturday night, 4,000 people. I was one of the 4 speakers. Great experience. The next morning, I'm telling you, we have to learn from the South Africans. Every session was right on time. 9 o'clock, exactly, 40 minutes, and then 20-minute break. 10 o'clock, 11. How did they do it? You know how they do it? It's amazing. At 9:30, somebody sitting right over there holds up a sign, 10 minutes left. 9:35, somebody sitting right there, holds up a sign, 5 minutes left. 9:40, the earth opens up, the speaker falls in, that's it, the end. So every session on time. Now it's 4 o'clock. It's 4 o'clock, and I'm on one side, Rabbi Goldstein and Rabbi Weiner on the other side, and I start asking questions about the book. 4:30, guy holds up a sign, 10 minutes left. 4:35, a guy holds up a sign, 5 minutes left. And this is the moment I was waiting for. I turned to Rabbi Wine. I said, Rabbi Wine, can I ask you a question? It's been bothering me for 40 years. He looks up, 40 years? I said, yeah, 40 years. I said, Rabbi Wine, I remember many years ago, 40 years ago, when I first became a male, that you needed a male for somebody in your community on the last day of Paysach. Somebody had a baby the first day of Paysach. They needed a male. You couldn't get a male to come down. I was just, in my early stages of my career as being a male. And you called me, and I spent the Yontif with you and your wife and family, and it was lovely. We did the bris. It was great. But then it came the last Ma'ariv of Paysach, the last Ma'ariv of Yontif. And there were so many people, hundreds and hundreds of people in your shul, in your big shul in Miami. And I looked around, and I saw Rabbi Wine. You're the only one in Miami without a suntan. Now, I couldn't say he was all white because I was in South Africa. So I said, you're the only man without a suntan. You never leave your house. You're always studying and writing and recording and writing books and articles. Don't you ever get tired? Don't you ever, how do you do it? Rabbi Wein, and the truth is, you go on his website, it is almost unbelievable. You cannot imagine that one human being can do what he has accomplished in his life. It's mind-boggling. I said, don't you ever get tired? He got so serious. And he said, I want to tell you a story that happened to me when I was 11 years old in 1946. And it's very important, I'm telling you, to remember 1946. He said, in 1946, I was living in Chicago. I'm an only child. And one day in 1946, my father says to me, Beryl, we're going to the airport. And I said, Abba, why are we going to the airport? And he said, because a great man is coming. The Rav of Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Isaac Halevi Herzog, he's coming and he's going to address all the Rabbanim in Chicago and all the Yeshiva Bachrim in Chicago. We all go to the airport. In those days, you could get up to the plane. Rabbi Isaac Halevi Herzog, a beautiful looking man with a long white beard, very dignified. He comes down off the stairs. There's a whole cavalcade of cars that goes into a huge shul. And the Rabbanim are sitting up front. The Bachrim from Skokie Yeshiva, that was the only yeshiva at the time, are sitting in the back. And Rabbi Isaac Halevi Herzog gives a shir. After he gives the shir, he says, now I want to speak to all of you, especially the boys of the yeshiva. He said, I just got back from Rome. Now don't forget, this is 1946. He said, I just met with the Pope. It was Pope Pius, Yimach Shemoy. He said, I said to the Pope, I've got a list of 10,000 Jews, 10,000 boys and girls. Give me these children, these are our children. You know you took them. Many of them we gave them to you because we thought we wouldn't survive the Holocaust. But many of them you took in your monasteries and in your churches. I've got the names of all of them. Give me back these kids, they're ours. And the Pope said, I know they're yours, but I can't give you back even one. He said, why not? These are our children. He said, because we have a rule. If any child has been baptized, we can never give him back to any other religion. And every single one of these 10,000 have been baptized. And Rabbi Herzog said, I begged him, I pleaded with him to give me back some of them. He wouldn't give me back one. And all of a sudden, Rabbi Wein said, Rabbi Herzog started crying. He put his head down on the podium and he wept and he cried. I never was so scared in my life. I never saw a man cry like that. And then Rabbi Wein said that Rabbi Herzog picked up his face. He said his face was red like a lion. And he looked down and he said, I can't do anything anymore for these 10,000 children. But what are you going to do for the future children of Klal Yisrael? Don't ever forget what I told you. You've got to save the future children of Klal Yisrael. I can't do anything more for those 10,000. But it's up to you, the young fellas. You've got to save the future generations of Klal Yisrael. And he sat down. And everybody, Rabbi Wein says, went up to shake his hand. And Rabbi Wein said, I have no idea. I don't know why, but when he shook my hand, he held my hand. And he looked into my face. And he said to me, are you going to remember what I said? Don't ever forget what I said. What are you going to do for the children of Klal Yisrael? And Rabbi Wein said, every time I want to put my head down, every time I want to put my pen down, I'm haunted by the words, what are you going to do for the children of Klal Yisrael? And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. We that have gathered here tonight for this Yarchei Kallah are from the most prominent people in Klal Yisrael because we've hooked onto the star, which was Rav Noach Weinberg, Zeichet Tzadik Levracha. We've hooked onto that person and his commitment and his mantra, which is the same as what Rabbi Herzog was telling those boys in Chicago in 1946. What are we going to do for the children of Klal Yisrael? That's what we come here for. And I'll tell you a fascinating Gemara, and we'll end with that. The Gemara tells us, in Bava Kama Daf Samach Amud Beis, Kiseitze Aish Umatza Koitzim. Somebody's got a backyard, and he starts a fire. And the fire spreads. Yeshalem Hamavir Es HaBe'era. The one who started that fire, he's got to pay for it. He's got to pay for it. Even if the fire spread and it goes past his yard, he's got to pay for it. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem says, Olai l'shalem es ha'be'era shehibarti. I got to make up for that fire that I burned. I burned the Beis HaMikdash. Ani hitzati eish b'tzion. I lit a fire in Sion. V'ani osid livnoisa be'esh. I'm going to build it with Aish. That's what the Gemara said. I didn't say it. The Gemara said that Hashem said He's going to build that Beis HaMikdash with Aish. Aish HaTorah and all those Jews who have that fire of commitment within themselves. Let us remember this great night together. Let us remember that this is a challenge. This is a mantra. Coming here to be at the Yarchei Kallah was not only a privilege, it's a responsibility. We go back with a new commitment to see what we could do for the children of Klal Yisrael, to minimize that ratio of 4 out of 5 that I know not from yet. Let us make that commitment, and then we'll be zeicha to see how Hashem will rebuild that third Beis HaMikdash with Aish. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.